Welcome back, guys, to Flatline Detonation. I wanted to show you a few things before I do more things off camera. As you can see, since last time, I've put the subframe in the car and have a lot of decisions to make. Currently, the PPF, that's what that torque tube thing is slid all the way back on the transmission. So we're as far as back as we can go, and I can currently only fit a fingernail, so that big, behind the, I believe it's the cam sensor on the head. Obviously that's not going to work. The only other way to get it on without moving the engine anyway is to cut into this heater core box. I don't really want to do that because that involves so many more issues. What I might look into doing is trying to move it farther forward. Right now we have clearance, so the engine can't go up any higher because it's hitting on this coolant passage. I'm gonna clearance that out more. Probably just cut straight up. I'll probably make a L piece to cover up all that. If we go up, there's plenty of room. I'll hop underneath here. There's room underneath the cross member. Another issue I don't like is the angle of the engine. It looks fine up here. That's, you know, what a normal 4-cylinder looks like in a rear-wheel drive application. But Honda has their engines at a slant, and as you can see, this oil pan is at a slant. So I'm assuming the pickup is right here. You would run into issues if all the oil ran to one side or the other and the pickup starves, and then, you know, you have engine failure. So if I keep this plate, that means the pan and the pickup have to be modified in order to properly oil this engine. Another thing I'm torn on is what happens inside of the engine if the engine stays at this angle. Would oil not properly drain down back to the pickup, or would oil pool up and then you have issues with smoke in the exhaust because it's just getting dumped back into one of the cylinders? I know the Boosted Boys, they're running their STI in a similar configuration, just straight up and down. The only issue is they're not doing any sort of autocross or road course racing like I would be doing with this car. So I have to either make a gamble, see what happens. Obviously I'm going to need to monitor oil pressure, because without monitoring, you're not knowing what's going on in the engine and you could have catastrophic failures. So again, I'm at a point I don't know what to do. I know I have to have more clearance somehow on the back of the head, because right now there's no way to hook the engine up properly and get it to run. Now there is room underneath. If we were to slide the trans forward, we're gonna get 1/2 inch. And then if these two notches were cut and this notch elongated, that would move the trans forward, enabling us to have room on the top side, but that requires cutting into the subframe, notching it out, boxing it in, all things that make a couple inches very complicated. Also gonna run into issues with how far in the input shaft goes into the transmission. The input shaft is fairly long, so I think it would be fine on there. But if it was to come too far out, a spacer would have to be made on the diff to push that drive shaft forward, or a custom drive shaft would have to be made. You're not gonna see me do it, but I'm gonna take this subframe out of the car again, mess with some stuff, see what I can get for clearance. Sorry if you guys wanna see all that, but it's difficult for me to film it and try to show you everything while I'm doing it because it's just me in here. All right, guys, went ahead and I notched the PPF to move the engine forward slightly. As you can see, it's cut. It will have to get extended and welded so it is still structurally sound and safe. I'm slowly mounting some accessories on here to see what fits, what doesn't fit. I'm running into a huge issue. Went ahead and borrowed this S2000 AP1 intake manifold. Now this doesn't have the adapter plate on it yet, and clearly we have zero room for the intake against the brake booster. Solution? Remove the brake booster. Now the intake manifold can fit. But not what I want to do. Go figure, you put an engine in a car that wasn't meant for it and you have tons of issues to work through. Now what I want to try to do, because I still have to notch that subframe out in order to get the engine to sit down just a little bit and move forward a little bit, I'm going to take that adapter plate. I got some measurements from the engine side and the transmission side for the bell housing and the engine bolt pattern. I'm gonna take it over. I found someone here in town that's willing to help me out and try to make a new adapter plate, because if the engine is clocked at the 40 degree or whatever, degree that is, it's going to resolve a bunch of issues. We're going to be able to put that brake booster back on, use the OEM intake, and the oil pan won't be at this crazy angle. So the only thing I'll have to do with the oil pan is get a baffling system, which a couple companies already make, and that'll solve the oiling issues for on-track use. Street driving would be perfectly fine the way it is. You're not going to be cornering, pulling any sort of G's in town. I mean, you could, but you might get pulled over. Went ahead and I fixed some of my mess in here. Spent a good hour soldering wires back together. I've got a couple on the other side. I actually hit it in 2 spots, which is awesome. I also cut the flange off of the stock RSX header. I'm gonna clean it up and see if I can get this to work with a factory S2000 exhaust manifold. Again, I want to use as many OEM factory parts as possible. OEM manufacturers have spent millions of dollars making those parts. They're reliable, they work, you're not gonna have to worry about anything with them. And usually they're a lot cheaper than most of these aftermarket parts. With this setup, it's cheap, it's reliable, everything works. I did do a little science project here. I took the factory RSX intake manifold and I cut it. And if you look, obviously it's not even on all the runners, but you could actually cut it, flip it, and weld it back together. So now if you throw this intake manifold back on there, let's throw that booster back in there quick. Booster's in, and now you have clearance with the intake manifold. The only thing I don't like about this intake setup is you have to cut it, you have to weld it, you have to spend time messing around with it, and it's cast, so it's going to be difficult to weld unless you're a really good welder, which I have a friend who's a good welder and is willing to work this project out for me. But for you guys watching and anyone that wants to duplicate this swap, it's a problem spot. If push comes to shove and I can't use a different adapter plate, then I'll have to go down this route. The other issue was the tensioner. If we grab the throttle body, the tensioner has to be eliminated and then probably put a tensioner somewhere in here off of the factory motor mount. Another issue I have with the engine being vertically in the bay, now this doesn't apply to everyone, this is just in my circumstance, I want AC. Obviously you're not going to fit an AC pump down there, and you would never ever fit a power steering pump down there. Luckily this car has electric power steering, which we'll have to figure that out eventually. So we're going to kind of start from scratch in a way, but in the long run I think it'll help me out and helping all of you out there out. But in doing so, we're gonna run into some other issues. Now I have this transmission and engine apart once you're ready to check this out, to see what would happen. The throwout, or the slave, sits on these two bolts there, which it fits fine with the way this was all put together. But as soon as you rotate this engine, you are going to collide with this first bolt hole and the slave. So I'm either going to have to somehow make a new mount off of this one bolt, or get a hydraulic setup to go inside the trans to push. I'm not totally against either idea. A hydraulic inside the trans might actually work better because I could put back spacing on it if the throwout bearing is too short. But I do know off of some things I've been reading on people over in Europe using them with other engines that they're just spacing that arm back and forth and then either extending or shortening the slave, and that works for them. All problems I'm working through. I was a little ambitious when I took this project on because I thought that that adapter plate would make everything just so easy, and it was just going to be a matter of figuring out wiring, making some engine mounts, but not quite the case. So fingers crossed that we can make a new plate and figure out that clutch, and it will make the engine sit correctly, and it'll make everything just work so much better. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you're getting something out of these videos. Make sure to hit the like and subscribe button. I'm just here to help you guys out and make some cool videos and do some fun stuff. So until next time, we'll see ya.